Yeah. And we're live.
Never gets easier. It never, ever gets easier. As soon as you push that button and we become live, everything just gets I get a bit nervous, Kim. I'm not going to lie, I'm a bit nervous, but I think we can live with it, right? And happy St. George's Day.
Yeah, happy St. George's Day. And also William Shakespeare's birthday and death.
And you like a good Shakespeare quote, don't you? Have you got one?
I have. I love a good quote. Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them.
Can't argue with that. So today we are going to talk about three things, right? We're going to talk about being judgmental, facial recognition, and your course that you passed, which is amazing, and also imposter syndrome as well, and how that's related to self-confidence, because I think that's quite important. So being judgmental, that's an interesting one. We had a conversation about that, didn't we, this morning actually, and how when we are judging other people, we're really sort of judging ourselves. Can you kind of expand a bit on what you meant by that?
Yeah, so basically when we judge others, what we're doing is we're judging either something in ourselves that we don't like or something in ourselves that we see as missing. So for example, if we judge somebody for being overconfident, it's possibly because we lack confidence ourselves and really would like to be a little bit more like them. But equally, sometimes if we judge somebody because perhaps they're dominating the conversation, it's because we know that we're possibly prone to dominate the conversation ourselves. And therefore, what we need to think about when we find ourselves judging somebody is, what lesson am I trying to learn here? So what is it that my subconscious brain is trying to bring to my attention to enable me to go and address that? I think, this week we both have had some examples where people outright judged us, and in some ways really harsh. And it was hurtful at the time until you realize that actually there's a couple of things there. One, that actually they're dealing with that pain themselves because they're projecting out their own concerns, their own feelings of lack of strength in certain areas and putting them on us. But equally, we've invited them into our lives for a reason, probably because we needed to hear it, so that we could have a look at it and say, why is this hurting me? Is it because it's true? And it's something that I'm concerned about for myself, but I'm just not being open to that? Or is it because it's something that I really would like to be and I'm not? And therefore, we can leave that person to, rather than respond, rather than retaliate, rather than get into an argument, you can leave that person to hopefully find the help that they need to deal with their pain. And you can take on board the lessons that they've been brought into your life for you to learn and go, okay, so what is it about this that I want to take away and do differently to help me be a better person?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a big point that has been, coming up over and over and over again, right? And I think until we learn these lessons, they keep reoccurring in our lives, and that's something that I'm just kind of getting used to. I think really within this self-development space, it's a tough one, right?
Yeah, it is. But I think we've got to remember is that our subconscious is trying to tell us where we go wrong. Sometimes, though, our subconscious goes against us. We know it's our inner child often, and therefore it desperately tries to keep us safe and holds us back as a result of that. But we're there to do the learning. So when it's holding us back, when it's judging somebody else, it's because it's uncertain that we are fully developed in a particular area. And we need to go and look at that and say, okay, so why do we feel like that? And what can I do to get the development to enable me and my inner child to feel safe in this situation? But you're right. If we don't learn the lesson, then the lesson will keep repeating, because we're all here to learn and grow. And so we've got to look at every opportunity and every challenge that comes to us and say, what's this? Why is this in my life? What am I here to learn? And what am I here to be grateful for? Because I genuinely believe everything in life is a lesson, a blessing, or both, even though at the time it might not feel like that.
Very much so. Very much so. So about facial recognition, I know you've just literally got your qualification. We talked a little bit about this earlier in the week when I congratulated you, because I think you were one of the first people to actually get this qualification, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, so Adrienne Carter, who's the original Face Whisperer, I'm part of her beta group of the first group that was going through and doing their practitioner training. And I think I was the second. So I think Katie pipped me at the post a day before to get our qualification out of the group, which was, it was just such an amazing achievement and so fascinating to learn all of these things that are available for us to understand people better and to communicate more effectively. And as you know, I believe at our base, everybody wants to be listened to, understood and respected. And these micro expressions can last 1/25th of a second. So they're extremely fleeting. They can be hard to spot, but they deliver a wealth of information for us about how the person's really feeling. And you've got to look at it and say, how do we say that we are emotionally intelligent if we don't understand what emotions look like on the face, and we don't understand, therefore, how to navigate those and to help the person feel understood and feel listened to? And it's been a real game changer in how to communicate and how to understand what people are really feeling, because often we don't want to appear to be a burden, do we? So how often when you felt really rubbish, have you said to somebody when they say to you, how are you? Go, I'm fine. Well, I always joke with anybody that knows me that's like, if I ever say I'm fine, I mean, I'm fed up, insecure, neurotic and emotional. So either get me a cup of tea or a glass of wine and do me a favour, leave me in a dark room to come to terms with whatever that is. But that's because actually what I don't want to do is be a burden. In those moments, what I probably really want to do is have somebody just sit there and hold the space for me to be able to say how I'm really feeling. And yet we don't. We do our best. And maybe that's just because we're terribly British. I don't know, but I'm sure it's not just around our origin, where we don't want to burden other people with our feelings. But think to yourself, when one of your friends has shared with you that they're not in a great space, that they just need to be able to have a bit of a chat, do you ever feel burdened? Or do you feel privileged that they've trusted you with their emotion? I know for me, I always feel really privileged. So why would that be any different the other way around? And these micro expressions are fascinating because we don't know them necessarily, but our subconscious does. So all the research has shown that irrelevant of our age, our gender, our culture, our status, even if we were born blind, we will still demonstrate these same 16 emotions the same way. And we don't know enough to be able to stop those expressions from leaking out. So you can hear somebody say one thing, but when you see these micro expressions, you can realize that there's something else that's being hidden, that they're either suppressing some real emotion. And when you don't use it to ever call anybody out, that's not the point of this. The point is to be able to ask more insightful questions, to truly understand and to really hold the space for that person so that they can be fully understood. And the amazing other thing is that you can actually do a lot of this also through personology.
Right. What do you mean by do it through personology?
So as well as the facial muscle coding is actually part of FACES, which is the facial action coding system. And it's a system that's being used in facial recognition software around the globe. That's how scientifically proven it is. But then you've got this other thing, which is called personology. And within the personology, there's about 37, I think it is, features or parts of our features that we can actually look at a photograph and determine somebody's likely personality. Now, this doesn't mean to say it's a guarantee. With all of these things, context is king, but it just gives you a bit of an insight into what some of the personality traits of that person is likely to be, to enable you to ask better questions, to seek to understand. And that's the point of this. You're only ever using it to seek to understand better, to be able to communicate better. But in doing so, in being able to look at somebody's picture and see that whether or not they are a person that would like you to get to the point, or whether or not they're going to be naturally curious and therefore they're going to need more information, whether or not they're naturally skeptical in which case you're going to need to give them lots of facts to prove your case. All of these can really help us level up our communication in preparation for meeting people, or for when we're actually talking to people for the first time, and can be able to identify some of these and just tailor our questions accordingly to move the conversation forward and level up our impact.
I think it's very interesting how you can become more perceptive towards other people just by looking at their expressions on their face. I think it's very, very interesting. I'm really looking forward to studying it in more detail, actually, to be honest. And so as far as like what they've been using these things for in the past, they've been using this with machine learning technologies for, I don't know how many years, it's probably 10 plus years, right? To actually work out terrorists and actually, at airports, so that they can pick up on like suspicious activities, right?
Yeah, because these micro expressions, they basically give us away if we're saying one thing and doing something else. But it's also been used to help really improve brand awareness. So, as an example, when we think about our brand and the adverts that we put out there, we think we're demonstrating a particular expression, a particular emotion. That's what we're trying to do. We know that people buy with their hearts first and their heads second. So whenever we're doing these pictures, we are trying to create that emotional connection with our customer. But if we don't understand some of these traits and some of these micro expressions, what we don't understand is while we're trying to deliver one emotion, we might be delivering another one. So, part of the training Adrienne was taking us through, she'd done a market research piece many years ago for an organization. And all they did in this research was they had two photos. They had a genuinely happy smile, and they had the same person with a fake smile. And when you look at both pictures, they look very similar until you know what you're looking for. But what they'd done is they set this test up. They were giving away mouthwash, and it didn't. And throughout the day, the only thing they changed is they changed them over midway through. Boxes were always stacked, filled exactly the same, so there was no bias on there. And they swapped them over midway through, so there was no left-right bias, so that it could be a genuine test. But what they found was 75% of the people took the free sample, the same free sample, from the box with a genuine smile. And that's because even though we might not know them, subconsciously we're aware of them. And there was another picture that they showed where this brand was trying to demonstrate a mother's love for their child. But once you knew what you were looking for, the woman was clearly showing disgust and the child was looking confused. So trying to demonstrate this like mother's love for their child, what they actually had was somebody who clearly was not that child's mother, and the child was therefore confused and interested. But the mother was like kind of a little bit disgusted at having to pick up this wriggly child that clearly they didn't know anything about. Now, you wouldn't have got that from the first look, but subconsciously you would have known that there was something off about that picture. And therefore it wouldn't have given you the emotional hit that they would need it to, for it to really drive home the message that they wanted to. And it's been proven that kind of knowing this stuff, being able to really look at the pictures that we put out there, our profile pictures, our brand pictures, the pictures that we use in our advertising, to understand, are they really demonstrating the emotion that I want them to demonstrate? Are they really depicting what it is that I want the person to get from this image, from this interaction? And it's amazing how many of our profile pictures, particularly those on LinkedIn, when you start looking at them, don't demonstrate the personality that probably you want them to, because they inadvertently are showing some of these micro expressions. So it's massively important that people understand this, I think.
Yeah, I find it particularly funny where they have a picture facing this way or that way. Like, it's just like you're disinterested. Like, why? Like, if you've got a picture like that, change it. That's my attitude. But I think in terms of, what you're saying about the mother and the child and the kind of the photo of like the mother being disgusted and the child completely confused because it obviously wasn't her mother, right, or his mother. Yeah, I find that particularly interesting. And the application of these in marketing is obviously huge, but I think also in leadership as well. And I know that's a big focus of yours, is actually using this within leadership, and that's going to be fantastic once we kind of roll out some training around that. It will be really, really useful for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly when we think right now of some of the challenges leaders are facing, which is, how do we lead our people safely through the challenges that are being thrown at us through the pandemic and the ever-changing moves. And we've also got that piece that's going, actually, how do we deal with the increased level of anxiety and mental fitness challenges? Well, imagine how much easier that would be to do if you could identify the micro expression that demonstrates the person's anxious. So you could ask a better question. You could provide them with some more support. Again, it's not to call people out on it, but to be able to identify early that somebody needs your help and then provide that help rather than waiting until it's too late and they need even more help.
Very much so. So as far as like imposter syndrome is concerned, we've been studying this together for over a year now, pretty much, right? And you've been studying this for over 4.5 years, quite seriously, but you've known about it for a lot longer. And what I find very interesting is the kind of confidence spectrum that we sort of started talking about a couple of weeks ago, and how there's kind of a space in the middle of that spectrum where people, are confident, they are competent, and they're not imposters. And that's the kind of space that we want to get people to, right?
Yeah, because I think, we end up in life, I think we've got a bit of we're calling it a confidence spectrum. So right over here, where we really doubt ourselves, we don't feel capable, we don't feel competent, we don't think we should have the things that we've got, is when we're in the real throes of imposter syndrome, because we can't see our competence, where our confidence and our view of self is missing. But equally, if we go all the way over here, and we'll probably all know somebody who's in this space, you get the people whose total and utter belief in their ability, even when all signs show them that they shouldn't have any belief in their ability. And it's known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And probably a good example of this is the character of David Brent in The Office. He believes he's the most amazing leader, but everybody else watching him is like, what are you doing? Make it stop. Please make it stop. So you've kind of got these two outer spectrums. And we kind of swing in between. And actually what we want to be able to do is get to that kind of middle point where we've got good self-confidence, where we understand our abilities and we also understand our limitations. So we know what it is that we can work on and we can go and seek help. I think it was Lao Tzu that says, a wise man knows what he does not know. And I think that's kind of, for me, that kind of epitomizes that point of good self-confidence, which is you know what you don't know, but you know what you do know. And the difference from that and imposter syndrome is, in imposter syndrome, you believe you know nothing. You can't see what it is that you do know. And if you think about the other end on the Dunning-Kruger piece, you actually think you know everything and you can't see what you don't know. So I think the balance is getting to that space where you know what you know and you know what you don't know, and therefore you can make a conscious choice about what you do next, what you do comfortably. And it's not about getting to... It's funny, I was chatting to my coach about this earlier in the week, and ego, we always worry about ego, don't we? We panic that, like, oh my God, I just don't want to be overly egotistical. I don't want people thinking I'm better than I am, because that would be horrendous. But actually, she was explaining it to me, and it makes total sense. There is empowered and disempowered ego. So empowered ego is where you are just comfortable in your own skin. You're saying, I'm not the best at this, but I'm not the worst. And actually what I've got to say is valid. And for the right people, it will land and make sense. And for other people, they'll just have a different opinion, and that's okay, because our opinions are our own. So, we can disagree, we just don't disrespect. But a disempowered ego is where the ego drives the outcome. We're doing it purely because we want to be seen to be amazing. So an empowered ego is where you're doing it because you're trying to leave things better than you found them. You're trying to do good. Disempowered is, it's all about me, and I want you to know all about me, and I want you to love who I am. And that's when it comes from that very disempowered state.
Yeah, well, we're giving away the 7-step guide, aren't we, to overcoming imposter, and people can grab that on overcomingimposter.com. So that's really cool, and very, very helpful, I think, for people. So in terms of kind of, to sum up, what do you think about the past week?
I think it's been interesting. Well, I think every week's interesting. I think every day, as you know, my nan used to say, every day's a school day, and God bless her, she was right. Because we do, as long as we go into it going, I wonder what I'm going to learn today, and take that opportunity to reflect. And I guess that's why we've kind of set up these reflections of the week, is we very often don't take that moment of pause to say, what have I learned and what am I proud of? And I think, this week we've had some real lessons. We've had some lessons in how to be less judgmental and how to understand that when we're judging others, we're judging ourselves, and therefore to turn that light inwards and have a look at what are the areas of us that we want to alter and change and evolve. Equally, there's been things that we've been really proud of. I'm really proud that I passed those exams, but more so because of the impact I know I can now have for people. So I can help more people have more impact around the world. And that's really important to me, that we leave things better than we found them. And I also am learning more about imposter syndrome and raising more awareness of it, because one of the challenges of imposter syndrome, as you know, is that when you're in it, your fear of being found out is so great that the one thing that you won't do is tell anybody about it, because then you're guaranteed to be found out. And yet, universally, from all the people that we've spoken to that have now learned how to overcome their imposter, or at least when it tries to take over, regain control very quickly, they've all been able to talk about it. And all the research shows that the first step of your recovery from your imposter is to talk about it. And that's why we're trying to raise more awareness. It's why we're trying to give away free guides to help people, because once you start talking about it, no matter how scary that feels right now, I promise it's the road to recovery.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, thank you, Kim. It's been enjoyable. And thanks to everyone for watching. Please drop us a message if you want to jump on next time. I think we're doing a midweek one of these as well, as on Fridays. And that would be lovely. So thank you very much and have a great weekend. We're happy to take any comments or questions if you have any on this broadcast. And don't forget, if you know anyone that suffers from imposter syndrome, go to overcomingimposter.com, and we'd be delighted for you to download the 7-step guide so that you can move beyond it. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks a lot. Have a lovely weekend, all.
Thanks. Bye.